Y'all know what's going on. It's time for another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker. Welcome to the show, y'all. Joe's world was shrinking. He stopped going out unless it was absolutely necessary. He checked all the locks twice, 3 times. He didn't answer calls unless they came through Monique. He even started watching Dre different. Not out of distrust, out of necessity. Because trust was now a currency that was to spend. It was too expensive to spend freely. He just couldn't do it. The level that he was getting on was changing the way he saw things. And the pain that he was feeling in his altar, it was coming in waves, so it was throwing him off. Everything was up in the air for him. And Officer Ward, he noticed the shift. He noticed how he was changing. So they met in the back of a diner off State Street. And it had one of those booths where you could draw the blinds down and all this, so couldn't nobody see. So they sitting there and Ward tell him, "You look like hell." Joe, he looked at him, he said, "He's real weak." He said, "Feel like it too." "Is it still worth it?" Joe thought for a moment, then he nodded, "Yeah, but it's killing me." Ward leaned in. "You're doing something that's never been done in this city. Turning a gang into a corporation. Turning warlords into CEOs. That ain't gonna come cheap." Joe looked up. "You think it'll work?" "I ain't trying to bring down the streets. I'm trying to raise up people who built them. That's what I'm trying to do. But it's gonna come with a price. Everything is gonna be up in the air. Everybody is gonna have to contribute to this. Everything is gonna come with a price." Ward paused. "I think you'll either change the city or you'll die trying." But the paranoia that he was feeling, it was growing louder. Louder than the applause. Louder than the cheers. Louder than the people that were telling him this is gonna be a good thing. And now Joe, in response to that, he got another safe house. One for sleep and one for meetings. He stopped telling people where he'd be at more than 24 hours in advance. He used burner phones like he had chewing gum. You know what I'm saying? The people still loved him. Most of them did. But he could feel eyes on him that didn't blink. Smiles that didn't reach, you know what I'm saying, faces. Loyalty that didn't echo. He stood one night on the rooftop of an old youth center overlooking the city. And below, the community was hosting a small block event. Children danced. Old folks out there grilling and doing their thing. You know how they go. And from a distance, it almost looked like peace. But peace, Joe knew it was deceptive. He pressed a hand to his stomach. The pain, it started pulsating again, and he gritted his teeth and leaned against the wall. And Monique, she stepped outside and leaned up against him and said, "We're getting close." Joe looked at her. He just stared out at the lights, kept looking down below. "I just hope I don't burn out before we finish." Joe hadn't slept in 3 days, y'all. His body was failing and he knew it. The fire in his gut had grown into a blaze that was raging and it couldn't be extinguished. And every sip of water, every bite of food felt like he was swallowing the glass. He leaned against the wall, tried to get a break because, you know, that tile on the wall was cold. But it wasn't helping. It wasn't helping him at all. It wasn't just the ulcers. It was the weight. The weight of building something new, a new world, while the old one tried to crush him. About 6:15 that morning, he stepped out into the gray morning, slid back, you know what I'm saying, in one of them black sedans, you know, the kind that can't nobody recognize it. Officer Ward, he was in the driver's seat, sipping on that coffee again, watching people in the rear view. "You look worse than I expected." And then he started up the engine. Joe didn't say nothing. They drove in silence for a few blocks before he even spoke. "I need a permanent solution." Ward didn't ask for clarification. He just pulled out, you know what I'm saying? He pulled up into an alley and parked. He killed the engine, turned and looked at Joe. "You sure you ready to hear this?" Joe nodded. He reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a sealed manila envelope. He handed it over. "Ghost teams. Off books. No badge, no oversight. Just a handful of wolves who owe me favors. Ex-bangers turned mercs. They move like shadows. No ties, no noise. You give me the nod, slag disappears. No arrest, no questions, no body." Joe held the envelope without opening it. "What's the cost?" War shrugged. "Your conscience. And you owe me a favor one day." Joe looked down at the folder like it was radioactive. In his world, death was familiar. But murder by ghost proxy? This was deeper than street justice. There was federal sin. "I'll think about it," he said quietly. "Don't think too long," War replied. "Your enemies aren't sleeping." That night, Monique found Joe hunched over a notebook in the safe house, sketching plans with a hand that was just shaking from the pain and the fatigue. He's wore out, his body is breaking down. "You sure you can do this speech?" Joe didn't look up. "I have to. We pulled the curtain back at the summit, but now I need to remind them why we're doing all of this. The message has to keep moving, even if I don't." She sat down beside Joe, placed her hand over his. "You keep talking like you're already gone." He smiled weakly, just making peace with the possibility. "You know how this thing goes." And at the venue, back in Ironcrest at the old armory, they had, converted that thing into a community hall. It held about 400 people, but about 600 showed up that night. Another few thousand were watching online. The stage was clean, the sound system tight, and the banner he had over the back of it, it said, "The future we build." Joe stood backstage with Dre. "You ready?" Dre asked him. Dre straightened his shirt, adjusted the mic on his collar. "No, but I'm going anyway." The lights dimmed, music played, the crowd, they wore it. They were happy to see him, they shouted. Joe stepped out onto the stage, his voice steady, practiced, patient, passionate. "They tried to kill me with lies, said I was a rat, a puppet, a fed. But you know what I am. I'm a builder. And builders don't stop until the foundation is laid, until the structure is raised, until the door is open. Everybody clapping and cheering. We got kids in these neighborhoods who think their only option is a casket or a sale. That ends with us. We're creating something new, legal, lasting, ours." The crowd was electric. I'm talking about they screaming and shouting, "Joe, Joe, Joe," they hollered. But halfway through the next sentence, Joe fell down. His hand went to his stomach. His face twisted. He tried to recover and get up, but another wave of that pain hit him and dropped him back down to one knee. Everybody gasping in the audience. They like, "What happened?" Blood is coming through his shirt, spread from under his vest. He collapsed. People screaming, running, phones lifted, cameras rolling. They're recording everything. Dre and Monique, they rushed to the stage. The medics in the crowd fought through the chaos and got up there. The live stream kept rolling. They just want to film this. Didn't nobody stop. Comments on there, "Is this real? Was he shot? He's been poisoned?" Damn. Everything. The next 72 hours, it was pure chaos. Pure chaos. Now Joe, he laying up in a private hospital under DEA protection. Officer War, he coordinated this undercover. But it was severe gastrinal bleeding from a ruptured ulcer. No poison, no hit, just stress. But the city didn't believe it. They filled in the blanks. And his enemies used that doubt. Slag posted a cryptic message. When fakes fall, the real rise. Tone Capo called a meeting of former loyalists. Khalif vanished, and Joe slept. Dre sat beside his bed. Monique stood at the windows, her arms crossed. He gave everything, she whispered. And he still might not make it, Dre replied. On the fourth day, Joe opened his eyes. Looking straight at the ceiling, it was white. The light was real soft on his eyes, his mouth was bone dry. His body felt like it had been dug up and resurrected. Ward sat in the corner. Welcome back, he said. Joe didn't speak. He just stared at him. You made it through the fire. Now the question is, what kind of man came out on the other side? Joe, he tired, he weak. He turned his head slowly. One who knows the movement might live without me, Ward nodded. And one who also knows it might devour you if you try to keep carrying it alone. Joe closed his eyes. The war wasn't over, but the rules had changed. Joe came home a ghost, not to his crib. This wasn't safe no more. Home now was a crumbling, like brownstone safe house in the heart of the city, sandwiched between two abandoned daycares and a liquor store with more bullet holes than bottles in them. You know what I'm saying? His body was still hurting. Every step felt like somebody was pressing glass into his stomach. But Joe wasn't thinking about the pain. He was thinking about the betrayal. The neighborhood, it looked different. The walls had more tags, the people had more fear in their eyes, music still blaring, dice still rolling, but there was tension in the air. Like the streets were whispering that something had snapped. And it had. The city was changing. And so was the war. Dre was waiting inside the safe house, pacing back and forth, gun on the table, bags under his eyes like he hadn't slept in days. They moving on us, Joe, he said. And the second Joe stepped through the door, Joe didn't even sit down. He said, who? Dre looked him dead in the eyes. Everybody. They sat down in the kitchen. The lights was dim, they low. Monique pulled out a file, slapped it on the table, and inside was surveillance photos, wild laws, and a printout of real estate contracts tied to a shell company called Civic Crown Holdings. The signature at the bottom, Khalif B. Turner. Joe didn't blink. He didn't blink. Monique spoke. We traced the paper trail. Khalif been broking land deals under fake name. All of it goes back to the city. Civic Crowns backed by developers who want Ironcrest leveled, flipped, and gentrified. Joe's fingers curled into a fist. He's selling out the block? Monique nodded. And using slag to stir chaos, drive property values down, make the hood unlivable. Then the city comes in talking revitalization while taking our homes for pennies. Joe stood up, face hard. You know how when you got your rocks in you got rocks in your jaw? That's how he was. He's sitting at the table, plotting how to get it. That night, Joe sat alone in the back of the safe house with the envelope. Officer Ward came in. He looked at him. His gut was still burning. His mind was still racing. He thought about when he and Khalif were kids, riding stolen bikes down Hollister Avenue, ducking the police, dreaming about building their own crew. Khalif used to say, one day, they gonna know our names without reading obituaries. Now that same boy was signing the hood's death certificate. Joe whispered to the dog, you turned on your blood for concrete and condos. He lit the envelope on fire. Let the ghost team burn it. If Khalif was gonna fall, it was gonna be loud and public. Across town, in a forgotten subway tunnel, below South Point. Slag stood in a room lit by battery lanterns and cartel steel. 3 men in press suits, tactical pants of course, and scorpion tattoos on their necks stood across from him. One of them, El Gallo, wore a gold-plated desert eagle on his hip, like a king's scepter. "You want fire?" El Gallo said in broken English. "We give you fire, but you give us your streets." Slag didn't blink. "You want sales? I'll give you sales. You want muscle? I got that, but we run this. My name still rings bells in the bricks." El Gallo smiled. "Then we partners." They shook hands. By morning, duffel bags of modified ARs, silencers, bulletproof vests, and black market surveillance get flooded into South Point. Slag didn't just want Joe gone now. He wanted Ironcrest erased. The first shot rang out in the daylight. An ambush on the corner of 8th and Midwood. Joe's boy CJ got hit twice in the chest, died before his phone hit the ground. Then came the retaliation, not from Joe, but from a young set still loyal to him. They hit a Slag corner trap house with firebombs. 3 people dead, one of them was 15. It spiraled. Gunfire every night, houses burned, civilians hit in the crossfire, moms afraid to walk their kids to school. Everything is going down. The mayor gave a press conference in a bulletproof vest. Cops flooded the blocks, but they couldn't touch the real players. They were too deep, too smart, too protected. Joe watched it unfold from a hospital bed with a needle in his arm and a monitor beeping like a countdown clock. When he was strong enough to move again, Joe called Dre and Monique, and a few surviving lieutenants that he still had back at the safe house. The room was dim. Joe's voice was hoarse, but solid. "We ain't just fighting dealers and shooters no more. We fighting money, politics, paperwork." Dre nodded. "So what's the play?" Joe gritted his teeth through a fresh wave of pain. His stomach was still killing him. "We do what they never expect us to do." Monique said, "Which is?" Joe stood up slow, grabbed a Sharpie, and circled a name on the top, and tapped the wall. "Civic Crown Holdings. We get legal." The room was like, "What?" "We sue their asses. We buy back every corner we can. We start a security firm. We put pressure on every politician touching dirty money. We combine street loyalty with boardroom strategy. And if they try to stop us," he pulled out a 9 milli from his waistband. "We remind them we steal from Ironcrest." 2 days later, Joe released a voice message on every social platform over a black screen. His voice full of fire, but he was tired. He was weak. "To everybody watching this city burn, I hope you enjoy the smoke. But just know, for every block you try to steal, every body you drop, every lie you spread, we're watching. We're coming. And when we rebuild, it won't be for survival. It'll be for power. If y'all want war, you'll get one. But this time, we building in the rubble." The city paused just for a second, and then it braced for what's coming. And if y'all want to know what's coming, you're going to have to tune in to the next episode. This has been another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and I say peace, y'all.